Nanaskamun, Cadmus Natisi Kasu. It's an honor to be here. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with all of you in your conference. I come to you from Treaty 4 territory. I'm currently sitting in Regina, Saskatchewan. As much as I would love to be in Lloydminster today, I, for safety, chose to do it from here. And I know a lot of you are safe in your environment listening. Being one of the later presentations in the day, I'm going to do my best to keep us active and to better understand. I'm an elected First Nation chief. I'm chief of the Cowessess First Nation, and we are located, our home nation, in southeast Saskatchewan. And we have over 100,000 acres of throughout central and southern Saskatchewan. In 1996, Cowessess is what you call a Treaty Land Entitlement First Nation. And what that means is at a time, and I'm going to teach us a little bit about history in a little bit here, there was at a time when Cowessess agreed with the Crown, pre-Canada, to understand that we were allotted land equivalent to our population, my ancestors. And the allotted land wasn't correct. And so in 1996, like a lot of First Nations are doing today, settling claims with Canada, Cowessess became a Treaty Land Entitlement First Nation. And so we have added 75,000 acres of land to our already existing 32,000 acres home reserve, as we say reserve in Canada. And that's really important in my opening comments because we're talking about economic development, economic self-sustainability, we call it on Cowessess. And so we have land around Regina, Saskatoon, and whatnot. And sometimes you're going to see First Nation status land as you do in Lloydminster with the casino and the almost completed gas station. And so Cowessess views these lands as economic self-sustainability. I was elected chief in 2016. I'm 39 years young. I look young. That's that reserve water I get to shower in every day. I grew up on Cowessess First Nation. I watched our nation grow. And I watched some great leaders come before me to help in Cowessess's strength. In 2000, I graduated from Cowessess Community Education Centre. And I kind of always knew I wanted to be leadership. I was always a volunteer and did as much as I could. And I eventually made my way to First Nations University of Canada, situated on the University of Regina campus. I went there for just about 5 years, and when I graduated an undergraduate degree in business administration and also a refocus on what Indigenous ideology means. You know, today on Cowessess, as a chief, we focus on 3 pillars in our Indigenous ideology. Economic self-sustainability is one of our first pillars. Our second one is political sovereignty, which includes things like child welfare. The third one is cultural rejuvenation, which includes just being proud of who we are as a First Nations people. And while at First Nations University of Canada, growing up on the First Nation, it's not just assumed that when you meet First Nations people from Onion Lake or from other surrounding areas in your area or where you're listening from, and this is a message to the non-Indigenous audience that are wanting to know more, that you can't just assume that Indigenous people just know our ideology, know our history, know our our philosophies. A lot of us are on a healing journey, and I got a lot of mine reset when I went to First Nations University of Canada, and it really allowed me to understand the end goal. It allowed me to understand how I can help people in Cowessess, people in Saskatchewan, people in Canada, is to understand what we inherited, understand that we all have a role to play moving forward. And so after my graduate degree, I knew I kind of wanted to be, really wanted to be a chief. But I wanted to know both understandings. I wanted to know all different views of life in order to be a good First Nation chief. So I got my master's in public policy at the Shoyama School of Public Policy. I grew up First Nation. I grew up on a First Nation. I went to a First Nations University of Canada. So I was very First Nation centric. And so the Shoyama School of Public Policy allowed me to understand bureaucracy, understand the role of MLAs, understand the role of MPs, the role government plays when it comes to working with First Nations people. And so it really allowed me to open my eyes. I did my last final on April 26, 2016, and I was elected chief on April 28th. So I had 2 days to celebrate my master's, and I got thrown to the wolves, if that's what you want to call it in politics. And in 2016, Cowessess was already making headway in renewable energy. We had a turbine, we had a battery storage, we had cattle. We were starting to get into agriculture, and we had 2 gas stations, and our economic self-sustainability, we had a lot of land. And so we started to do assessments of our First Nation. Are we being efficient was our first question as leadership. We assessed our renewable energy side. And so Cowessess First Nation, we found out that when you have a renewable energy project with SaskPower, you have to have a purchase power agreement. Because in Saskatchewan, SaskPower has the monopoly to dispersing power and selling in the grid, you have to have a purchase power agreement. Our purchase power agreement was 1 megawatt, and we were only producing 600 kilowatts. So we weren't being, we felt, efficient with our purchase power agreement. So we started to work with the Government of Canada and SaskPower, the Government of Saskatchewan, and we placed around our turbine 400 kilowatts of solar. So we didn't amend or change our purchase power agreement. We just made sure we were efficient with our purchase power agreement. And so today, when you go to our site, it's just on the east side of Regina, you'll see a beautiful Econ turbine, 70 feet in the air, spinning, and you'll see 400 kilowatts of solar. And so we produce right now 1 megawatt. When we started renewable energy back in 2012, it was a very uncommon discussion at the time about renewable energy. It was starting to be solar, what is turbines. And so at that time, the prior chief and council worked with engineers, worked with a consulting firm. At the time it was called McNair, and they did some tests. And so once they found out that a turbine is sustainable in Regina, we thought it was going to be on our First Nation, 2 hours east of Regina. An hour and a half, sorry, if you drive the speed limit. 2 hours if you drive the speed limit. And so we found out that the best place to put our turbine at the time was in Regina. So we realized we had urban land in Regina, purchased from our treaty land entitlement. And so we started to assess. We then had to understand the cost of this. The turbine itself and the battery storage and all the hookups, we needed to invest 2.2 million of our own source dollars. Like, this is on top of what we are going to finance. And so we partnered with 2 other First Nations at the time to have a 3-way partnership. And everything was starting to work out. And this is a good case in business, because I'm going to get to how to work with First Nations when it comes to economic development and whatnot. And so we were getting to the end goal, and somehow Cowessess and these other 2 First Nations, we started to get a little political, as it's not just a First Nation thing. Any government sometimes get a little political, our MLAs, our MPs. But it started to kind of get a little uncomfortable in how we were deciding things. And so these other two First Nations pulled away. They paused this ending. So Cowessess had some really tough decisions to make at that time. And I was a university student at the time, and I remember going to the community meetings. But at that time, our chief at the time, his name was Grady Leroy. He stood up in a band meeting, in a community meeting, in a Cowessess citizen meeting, and started to explain the situation and how renewable energy is going to be a part of our future. About how, in order to be stewards of the land and to look after our children and children yet unborn, that Cowessess can be a leader in helping with renewable energy. And so he then asked, can we take out of a trust fund, because First Nation have trust funds. They're not like checking accounts. You do need citizen votes to unlock these trust funds. They are very micromanaged by government, and they are ratified by the citizens of Cowessess, as some trusts are others. And so in order to take money out of your trust, you need a vote. And the vote has to pass. Chief Grady at the time told the people, we need $2 million from our own source trust dollars to own a turbine, to own renewable energy storage batteries. And it's like talking a different language, because Cowessess First Nation, we were used to talking about social work, business, teachers, but renewable energy, engineering, and science was something outside the norm. And so he stood up there the best he could and explained the situation, how we should have a vote to unlock $2 million to get this project to the finish line. And a lot of questions happened. How is this going to fix my house? How is this going to create jobs? You know, just the questions leadership normally gets. And so the vote came, and the vote didn't pass with flying colors, but it passed enough to unlock $2 million to invest in this renewable energy project. So in 2012, Cowessess had a turbine and 2 econ storage batteries, lithium storage batteries, east of Regina. We were selling into the grid. And so that started our foot in an industry that we have never entered before, renewable energy. And so when I became chief, I talked about how we seen the purchase power agreement that was created in 2012, and I got elected in 2016, to see if it was being efficient. And so we added 400 kilowatts of solar to our purchase power agreement. And so moving forward, we already had the infrastructure there, the 3-strand phase. We already had a purchase power agreement with SAS Power. So we addressed SAS Power and said we want to do a bigger project. And so SAS Power has this goal of net metering 50% renewable energy by 2030. And so coming a mandate from the government of Saskatchewan. And so they have these bids right now that they throw a 10 megawatt, 200 megawatt. And so Cowessess in 2020, we received a 10 megawatt solar bid, meaning that SAS Power will work with us to purchase 10 megawatts of solar from us. So we were all working out. We got some grants, we got things going, we had our interest dollars that we were making profit from on our other turbine project already. We're starting to make profit. Because how it works is turbines and renewable energy, you think of them as 25 to 30 year. Purchase power agreements are 20 years. But you know the infrastructure, if everything works out well, they're about 35 years you can get return on investment for. And so what the turbine does to Cowessess is the first 5 years, we paid back our loans. We paid back what we borrowed to get it. Year 6 to 20 in the purchase power agreement is profit, minus the just the general cost of keeping it maintained. Year 20 to 35, a new purchase of power agreement will happen. So we took the profit that we were starting to make from our turbine and our battery storage, and we used it to get our 10 megawatt. And so we finalized our 10 megawatt for solar. We finalized the financials, the infrastructure. And one interesting case in this one is we had our solar panels ready to purchase. We did a bid out in the world, and we were going to purchase them from somewhere in Asia. And the election in the United States happened. Donald Trump didn't get reelected. President Biden got elected. When President Biden did his inauguration speech, he talked about renewable energy being the future of the United States of America. That Wednesday, our technical team got a call on Cowessess and said, we need a check for your solar panels by Monday, or we're selling them to bigger purchasers. We are respecting your purchase because as decisions are made, as checks are produced. It was the most interesting 6 days I've had in a long time, being the chief and helping make sure we get a check for our 10 megawatt solar panels was verified. And so come next month, around our turbine, Cowessess First Nation will have a turbine and 10 megawatts added on to our 400 kilowatts of solar all around the turbine to produce 11 megawatts into the grid in this province. And so that's a huge accomplishment, knowing that only in 2012, prior chief to me stood up and was trying to explain what renewable energy was. These projects are 100% economic self-sustainability. Some of the growing pains we face moving forward is we rely on external companies to maintain these for us. We have capacity issues internally as a First Nation to get someone in engineering from our nation, science, to be trained to oversee these. Right now, Saskatchewan Research Council, SRC, oversees them for us. And they do a great job. I'm not discrediting them. But one of the end goals when it comes to First Nation economic self-sustainability is how do we train our citizens to oversee these projects. We have trained our people to install solar. We have partnered with companies that are solar companies, and we did so good on the 400 kilowatt that 2 of our First Nations citizens now follow this company throughout Saskatchewan and Alberta installing other solar projects. So, the job opportunities are there. In the last year, Saskatchewan, the Sass Party, threw out a 200 megawatt turbine bid. This is huge. This is a $250 million project. They threw out a bid half a year ago. Cowessess submitted all of our documents and land where we feel it should be to Sass Power. 2 months ago, Cowessess was awarded a 200 megawatt turbine purchase power agreement opportunity with Sass Power. This will make Cowessess the biggest organization and First Nation in renewable energy in the country. This is a 2023 project. Right now, it's estimated at a $220 million project. It entails 50 turbines expanding throughout an RM south of our First Nation. And so renewable energy is a debatable economic project. I don't disagree with that. Our turbine spins, sun is here, but it can't 100% ever sustain our grid. We got to figure out different ways in this province. I'm not here to try get political and debate that. What I want to get across in my opening comments is First Nations want to be a part of the growth of our provinces. First Nations were not a part of the growth. We're not a part of the creation. We are entering now in many means. Renewable energy, contracts, Line 3, when Line 3 came through Saskatchewan, there was companies that were created. There are ventures today that are created. Meadow Lake, FHQ, Lac La Ronge, Cowessess. We got Cowessess Ventures. We're certified under the Corporation Act, a viable corporation that's ready for business. And so renewable energy is just one portfolio of our economic development. The profit that we make helps us with our unfunded areas. It helps us with our pillars of cultural rejuvenation, economic self-sustainability, and political sovereignty. It helps us become sustaining. Many people will pass Cowessess people wherever you go. We're a very big First Nation. We're 4,300 people. People, that's a big First Nation for a Southern First Nation in Saskatchewan. We're 4,300 people, 900 live on the First Nation, and 3,300 live throughout Lloydminster, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, Regina. And so, as First Nations move forward, when we're in a truth and reconciliation moment in our true history between Indigenous people and Canada, we got so much more to learn. But it's economic self-sustainability that is going to be our driver. In one of our entities called Chief Red Bear Children's Lodge, and some of you that may have seen the news lately, Cowessess signed a child welfare agreement giving Cowessess First Nation full jurisdiction over our children and care and protection. Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Moe came to Cowessess, and the three of us signed the first in history to invest and fund in child welfare. One of our motives in this child welfare is every child shall wake up and watch their parents get ready for work throughout the week. That can change so much in one generation. And so that is why renewable energy, that is why education, that is why all the Cowessess ventures we do is so important to us. Because profit will help us, but how do we strengthen homes? How do we strengthen what we inherited from the aftermath of what residential schools did to First Nations people? What 60s Scoop did to First Nations people? Economic self-sustainability is a big part of that future. And one of the biggest challenges that we face today as Canadians is what I have been sharing called ignorance and accidental racism. And I want to switch gears just a little bit, because as we work with First Nations people, First Nations organizations, casino, the casino in Lloydminster, I'm only assuming, and just being open and putting my shield down, is how did a First Nation casino just come up in Lloydminster? What is it? Why? Like what's going on? How come you just can't build a regular casino? How come it has to be First Nation owned? I understand that we inherited something. But I want to share with you a little bit to better strengthen the relationship between First Nations and Canada, because we truly did inherit this. Nobody today created residential schools. Nobody today created the Indian Act. Nobody today created 60 Scoop. But a lot of it is still going on, and that's why we all have a part to play to make sure that we can all adjust our compass just a little bit. And so where I want to begin with this is what is accidental racism? I'm going to start there. What is accidental racism? Well, accidental racism is when a 12-year-old kid is sitting at a kitchen table and mom and dad perk up and start saying things like, those First Nations, they just, take our taxes and dot, dot, dot. Or, how come he just can't get a job? Why is, and this little kid sitting there, 12 years old, is going to go into his or her circle or his or her school, and they're going to be teaching about Indigenous history, the truth. And that 12-year-old is going to get thrown off because sometimes that 12-year-old in just a little bit of homes in this country just gets taught by parents a little bit of accidental racism. Like I don't think that's true. And then we throw off our 12-year-olds because our millennials in our schools are getting taught the truth. I'm going to switch over, and it's going to hopefully better help with ignorance. What is ignorance when it comes to truth? One of the things we got to realize is we in this country, a free country, a developed country, one of the G7 countries in this world, we rely on our education system to prepare us. Well, I'm going to break it down into generations. The baby boomer generation that we rely on in this country, that an Indigenous philosophy and ideology, that our baby boomer generation is our elders, we give them the utmost respect, and they are decision makers when it comes to moving forward. But we got to understand the baby boomer generation and the true history of my people sometimes wasn't fact. A lot of the baby boomer generation, the really only thing in the textbooks was terms like savage, and Hollywood movies was the biggest education. So we got to realize that truth was not taught in an entire generation. From the Hollywood, John Wayne beat the Indians every time, and stuff like that. The generation boomers, the biggest solution Generation X were taught in education was that the white paper of 1969, Pierre Trudeau, was the solution. And that's why today some of the mentality is, well, why don't you just leave the reserve? Why do you have reserves? Why do you want to have special status? Why do you want to have special privilege? Just be Canadian. Well, that's the white paper talking. Unfortunately, if anybody thinks that's the solution, you're wasting your energy, because that will never happen. Generation Y, a little better. Generation Y, there was treaties were starting to be talked about, but residential schools still active, so it was really tough to learn about residential schools when they were still going on. Today, the millennial generation, kids of yours, nephews and nieces of yours, grandkids of yours, they're being taught the truth in their schools. And so there is no mandatory Indigenous Studies 100 coming to all Canadians. We must take it upon ourselves to reset our compass to know the truth. These unmarked grave stories that are coming out from Kamloops to Marival to others, it's really tough on all of us. For Indigenous people, it's validation. Validation of the pain, the hurt, the anger, the frustration, the family breakdowns that are real. To Canadians, Canadians are putting down their shield and they're admitting that they don't know much about the true history between Indigenous people and Canada. We're at a perfect moment in our Canadian history where we can reset our compass and we can focus on a new horizon that is built upon a true relationship, that the First People here do have rights. And it's not like First Nations people want to just evict or stop projects. It's just that we want to be a part of the growth. And I use an analogy of two canoes to understand what a good relationship would look like in economics, in relationship. And I want to talk about just a mind vision of two canoes flowing down a river. I'm not trying to say this is the wampum of Ontario or that. Just think of two canoes. My chief who agreed to treaty, his name was Cowessess, Kwiwizants, if you want to say it in the language. Cowessess agreed to treaty because he envisioned treaty as two canoes going down the river. Every generation, one canoe is the Crown, Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta. The other canoe is Cowessess. And please, if you're First Nation or wanting to understand, the other canoe is the rights holder First Nation. Every generation we were to flow down this river and exchange a child. So those children would be raised in those canoes and understand the ideology of that other canoe and give back. And then that way, we would always flow down the river as long as the sun shines, grass grows, river flows for generations to come. That didn't happen. 2 years after Treaty 4, the same year as Treaty 6, where Lloydminster is, the Indian Act was thrown in the Cowessess canoe. The Indian Act had one purpose: to imprison the minds of Indigenous people, that we don't allow women to take true leadership roles, that we are micromanaged from birth to death. And the Indian Act is not economic friendly. I'm going to finish off my presentation talking about modern day challenges today we face. 22 years later, the Merivale Residential School was thrown in the Cowessess canoe. It had one purpose: to try and brainwash Cowessess people, to not know our kinship, to not know our language, to not be Indigenous, Nehewak, Anishinaabe. And so the Cowessess canoe for the last 130 years fell behind. And today, economic self-sustainability is one of our 3 pillars to catch us up. We're not looking for Canada to slow down the canoe. We're just asking for investment and policies and bylaws to help us and corporations to catch up our canoe, where we can truly be a nation to nation and true partners. It's not like First Nations want to take a different route down a river. We share this land together. Wetaskiwin. There's a town in Alberta called Wetaskiwin. That's a Treaty Cree word that was used, meaning peace on the land. We don't want to park our canoe, and it will never happen. Let's not focus on things and spend our energy on things that will never happen. We just want investment in our canoe so we can catch up and flow down this river. If we don't want to spend energy trying to invest through economics and other means, then pretty much we're telling our children, you figure it out. And I am for one who raises a 10-month, 2-year-old, 5-year-old, and 14-year-old. I don't want to tell them to figure it out. I'm here to figure it out. What does decolonization mean? We have been colonized as Indigenous people at levels that are so harmful today. But how do you decolonize? What does that actually mean? Decolonization is only the beginning. The Pandora box and the other side, we don't know what that looks like. But decolonization has to happen. If it doesn't happen, then we're going to experience many years of challenges. And economics is our future in this province. I'm not here to debate what renewable energy, resource extraction, those are other conversations. SaskPower gets it right. SaskPower has a clause in their contracts that state who is your Indigenous partner in this bid. A lot of these renewable energy companies that are coming to Saskatchewan are being created in Saskatchewan. They now have to reach out to First Nations or Métis to find partnerships, then put in their bid. That is strengthening that Indigenous canoe. I love that analogy. I love that approach. And how can we do that moving forward with all of our projects? Because right now, as a First Nation, as a chief, I manage poverty. With my council, we manage poverty. We manage physical, mental, emotional poverty. And it's not an easy task. I am a strong believer that economics is our future. I want to spend a little bit of time before I close explaining other entities Cowessess does, and then some Indian Act challenges, and then some solutions with reconciliation. Cowessess got into agriculture. So in 2012, we started it as food sovereignty. We got into Black Angus. And today we run a herd of about 250, and we sell our product to the market. The end goal there is that when you go to steakhouses in southern Saskatchewan, we want to see Cowessess Angus on the menu, meaning that it's going to be one of your purest. It's not an easy task. Agriculture is not easy. Cowessess has 32,000 acres of agriculture-ready land today. And 6 years ago, we didn't farm any of it. It was farmed predominantly by non-Indigenous, non-Cowessess people who would come onto our reserve and pay very low rates. And so 4 years ago, Cowessess submitted a grant to Canada, the government of the Department of Agriculture, this new initiative called the Indigenous Food Ag Initiative, and we got a grant to do a grain farming business plan. And so we finished it. We partnered with Myers Norris Penny, who did agriculture business plans, and we got our plan. So 2 years ago, we started grain farming. We started small. We farmed 500 acres of wheat. Just a little couple sections, we farmed a little bit. And we today farm 4,500 acres of grain, canola, and wheat. And so we are making headway now in agriculture. Our end goal for grain farming is to be a farm industry of 25,000 acres, owning from agriculture machines to even byproducts, seeing what chemical, transportation, even our own pools and whatnot. One of the challenges we face in agriculture is very similar to our renewable energy. How do you have succession plans? How do you make sure that our baby boomers, who are pretty much leading our agriculture today, our Terry Laras, our Big Al's, how do we make sure the next generation's ready to farm, take over our organization? This is not a farm operation. This is a registered entity under the Corporation Act. And so you got to pay wages, you got to pay salaries. So we got to figure out a lot here. We're trying to get agriculture in our school to teach our young people. But the opportunity is there. Other areas we focus on is we have gas stations, we got urban development, we just opened a Tim Hortons in Regina. We're about to do a 5-story office building in Regina and whatnot. And so the opportunities are there. You know, one of the biggest challenges I face and I see is First Nations people. We're not always keen to knowing what economics means. We have different definitions. And, you know, to have a little patience and to educate and stand beside is what we ask. Stand beside us in projects. Educate us. Give us a little bit of patience to better understand the project. One of the best things that happened in this province for economics for First Nations is Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority. Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority runs First Nation casinos across the province. At Lloydminster, you're one of our newest casinos. Not only does it employ, but even personally it helped me. I was just a young First Nation person living on the reserve, right out of high school, no big goals, no big dreams, just living day to day. I became a live games dealer in Bear Claw in White Bear at a Siga casino. And I had very little confidence. I didn't really understand, you know, my long-term goals. And Siga invested in me. Siga built me to have confidence that I was valued, that I had a lot of lot to offer. And after 2 years of being a live games dealer, I then went to university, which led to me being a chief today. And our casinos are doing that today. They're investing. They are giving employment. And so also the profits that are made are dispersed equally across Saskatchewan. Pre-pandemic, Cowessess would get our fair share, and we would invest it into unfunded areas, our urban people, our elders, our youth. And so it is a good approach. And so, I know, Lloyd Minister, you're new in a relationship with SIGA. SIGA brings a lot of value in this province. It brings a lot of confidence to First Nations people and to your own CDCs, your corporations that help. I'm going to finish off by just talking a little bit about the Indian Act and moving forward. What is reconciliation when it comes to number 92 in the TRC? Well, first off, reconciliation in Cree is defined as Mio Witi Witawin. Mio Witi Witawin in Cree means let's walk and share this together. That's what reconciliation means today. Who are the authors of the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action? The over 100,000 residential school survivors who told their story. And so that is why it is really important that we all understand, educate ourselves, and implement the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. And don't do it just to please the few Indigenous people in your organization or the few Indigenous communities or people in your social circles. Do it for the fact that my 5-year-old daughter, who is an Indigenous female, who in this country is wanting to be an autopilot, an air pilot right now, that's what she told me the other day, and understanding that the toughest person to be in this country is an Indigenous female. You don't have to go far to go and read the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Calls to Justice. But implement the Truth and Reconciliation because my 5-year-old daughter wants the same opportunity as your 5-year-old daughter or niece or granddaughter, and sometimes is non-Indigenous. And so that is why the Truth and Reconciliation is so important to all of us. Is if we just Kiam and Cree or look the other way and don't do much, we're pretty much telling our next generation, you figure it out, and I don't want to do that. But what does number 92 actually mean? Number 92 of the TRC is economic development. What it means is corporate sector. It means frameworks, like assess your frameworks in your work environment. It means focus on your principles. One of your principles should be about helping Indigenous nations expand in their economics. Talks about corporate policy, core operations. Looking around, if Saskatchewan is 17% Indigenous people and your corporation is 3% Indigenous employment, it's time now that you review your core operation, your activities, your involvement with Indigenous communities. I can only speak to Cowessess, but I absolutely love when organizations come to Cowessess. I'm not saying just go show up to Onion Lake or wherever and just go and start to do things. Like, there are protocols. But one of the things we do on Cowessess, with all corporations that we work with now, they do a one-day cultural relationship with us. They come to our nation, we bring elders, we bring survivors, we do the blanket exercise, we do some speeches, we teach them about our economics. So then that way they know our relationship is building together. We do it with Mosaic and Potash. We do it with Enbridge when Line 3 was here and whatnot. But I'm going to finish it off with a 2-minute about the Indian Act, and then I'll close from there. The Indian Act today is the biggest burden to economic growth for First Nations people. We got to understand the land that is Indian land today, reserve land, that is, from a business perspective, not even viewed as an asset. It is crown land. It is the Queen's land set aside for her little red Indians. And so when Cowessess did our turbine, we had to spend $90,000 to understand how the Department of Justice, the Department of Indigenous Affairs, can help us view our land as economics. When we did our Tim Hortons in Regina, we spent $70,000 on legal, making sure that the Department of Justice and Indigenous Services Canada understood the economics of our land. In business life, you don't budget for stuff like that because it's just fee simple land. So the Indian Act hinders economic growth. And I'm not saying we should just delete the Indian Act tomorrow. The Indian Act does protect land. So we got to find substitutes. We got to find new laws to strengthen to exit the Indian Act. That's a whole other conversation. But when you're doing business partnerships with First Nations, just understand that the Indian Act hinders economic development. And so better understand, have a little bit of patience, and know that every First Nation does want growth. We do want to be a part of the growing economy. But at the same time, we are tired of being left behind. We're tired of being brought in when the finishing touches happen. We want to be from the beginning. It helps us, it invests in us, and moving forward, I guarantee you, if we can just do this right, this province and Alberta as well, because Lloydminster's on the border, and this country will be economically ready for those big projects. But if we just think the status quo approach is going to work, we are in for journeys where I am going to be challenged to try and figure things out as well. And so, implement the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. Understand First Nations want to be a part of the growth. And Lloydminster, you are a driver when it comes to, resource extraction, and I know the border to many great projects. A lot of our oil and gas that we rely on here in the south and whatnot. Those are more conversations that have to have. But just make sure that we invest in personal and in corporations, and let's try and find more aggressive ways to include Indigenous people moving forward. I thank you very much for giving me time to talk to you today. I had so much to share. I'm probably one of the last presentations today, so it's really tough to hang on to keep listening. But the Naskamun in Cree, thank you very much for letting me share with you from Chief Delorme, Cowessess First Nation.